we're back. The gentleman next to me is Mr. Nigel Hughes. Nigel, welcome to CWS again. CWS as it is.
Hi, Selwyn. Thank you very much for having me back on in such a short period of time.
It's
Good
okay.
afternoon.
It's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There's much work to be done, my brother. And I'm glad that you've taken some time off your busy schedule to spend with us this afternoon. But Nigel, the good ones go too soon. And I'm referring to people that we know, that we grew up with, who've passed on by natural causes and on time and have had untimely passing. I saw your post on in memory of one of our sisters, Deborah Backer. How
Yeah.
much of a loss is this gem to Guyana, would you say?
Deborah, Debbie Backer was the live wire in Parliament. Anybody who listened to any parliamentary session would have to concede that Deborah Backer was the liveliest wire in the Parliament.
Wow.
Even her let me say, the Attorney General who sits on the opposite side of the House at her funeral said that she was absolutely deadly in Parliament. I don't think anybody in Parliament had her wit. I don't think anybody in Parliament commanded the attention, both of those inside and outside of Parliament, as Deborah did. She's a tremendous loss, or she was a tremendous loss.
And we are still in America celebrating Women's History Month. March 8th, we had International Women's Day. And I know how you feel about women having equity and equal rights in civil and political arenas. What do you think Debbie Backer would be saying today to the women with these elections coming up? What do you think her message would be?
Well, I certainly think if Deborah was here, the women's agenda would be a lot more prominent. I'm not saying it's not prominent enough, but it certainly would be a lot more prominent than it perhaps is at the moment. I suspect it's going to get even more prominent. Of course, she'd be encouraging everybody, just not the women, everybody, that they have to go out and vote. Deborah would be absolutely outraged at the assassination of Courtney. And insofar as women's issues are concerned, she would be leading that debate, I suspect.
Talking about Courtney, brother, what was your relationship with him?
Courtney, I didn't actually know Courtney prior to about 4 months ago when he actually hit the media when he was protesting outside of the Attorney General's chambers. And my wife Kathy one day stopped by and signed his petition, and she came home and told me that this guy was really making a tremendous sacrifice for all of us. But I suppose, like all of us, we noticed, we look at it on TV, didn't do very much. And then he came to see me one day. I got a call from him and he said, "I got to see you." He came across to see me, and the chemistry was just good when we met. What had happened was the police were about to charge him, and he indicated, whether I'd represent him. I said, absolutely, I'd do it for you pro bono. He called me the next day. They had just arrested him and taken him to Brickdown Police Station. I met him at the station while he was in custody. I arranged bail for him. And then we went to court. And we were in court, 4 or 5 times.
I hope. Seems as though we get a little glitch in the transmission there. Let me switch, take a short. Okay, there you are.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
I don't know how much you missed.
Yes, you were saying, I think we got cut off when you said you went to court, I think 5 times, and I didn't hear anything.
Sorry, that's how much you've lost. We went to court about 5 times. The witnesses did not turn up. Excuse me. The case got dismissed, and then after that, he came to my office and said, "Look, I want to donate a bullhorn to the Alliance for Change for the struggle that the party was going through in terms of bringing a better day to Guyana." He actually brought it, dropped it off one day. We spoke on the phone several times after that. He was actually opening a joint APNU AFC office in Diamond and was trying to get me to come up there the Sunday before he died because he wanted to open it. And I told his colleague who was with him, who wanted to open the office, we should really wait for the launch of the Linden rally before we could, you know, he should open that office. And then on the fateful night, I got a call. Said, look, he got killed, and I went to the scene of the real horrific scene of that crime. And I started posting pictures from right there. It's a big loss, huge loss. Like, I mean, I can't say enough. At the funeral, I lamented the fact that I was really, and I am really very sorry that I never actually took the time to go and stand next to this brother while he was protesting. And I really do, the next time I see somebody standing up for me as publicly as Courtney did, I will not miss the opportunity. I will stop what I'm doing just to go stand up with them and say thank you. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, Courtney wasn't interested in political office. Courtney wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for a better day for Guyana. And we all owe him a debt of gratitude.
Nigel, from the time you've spent with him and get to know him a little more than many of us, what is it you saw in this young man? Why do you think he was so willing, in spite of the atmosphere of violence and crimes and unsolved murders in Guyana? Why do you think he was so willing to stand by himself with a bullhorn and placards?
One thing I would say about Courtney is that Courtney was passionate about Guyana. Courtney, I think anybody who met Courtney would tell you, you know, within the first 5 minutes, this was a young man who was passionate about Guyana, who didn't actually come out to the 70s. He was in school long after we were in school. He was a national athlete. He served the country in the army, and he was just passionate about Guyana. If you look at the television, the video clips of what he said when he was in front of the Attorney General's chambers, he just thought that this was outrageous that the chief, the Attorney General, who was responsible for advising the country on the laws, could say the things that he did say in that interview, admit that he said them, and still remain in office. He thought that it brought discredit to the country. He thought it was unacceptable that irrespective of whichever political party you belong to, that you can actually have somebody occupy that office, make those comments, admit that those comments were made by him, and still remain there. He thought that the country was being very poorly portrayed internationally, and was extremely passionate. I think one thing you will say about Courtney is that he was a very passionate young man.
What would you say his death means to our nation, Guyana, at this time, in this atmosphere of hope for change?
Well, the impact of his death is absolutely it's devastating. It has deeply wounded the soul of the country, because I don't think there are very few people who have a view that suggests that his death was anything other than related to what he was doing on the political front. I think that's the general consensus of most people. They may argue as to the theories as to which of the political parties might benefit, as I hear some people in the government say. But I think it's a tremendous loss. And here's I think this is what was intended with Courtney, and perhaps some of it has been achieved. The people who took out Courtney clearly intended to silence him. That is obvious. They wanted him off the scene. But also they wanted to send a message to anybody else who might be contemplating that level of public display of the outrage of what was happening in Guyana. That look, if you want to follow this type of action, understand that this is within the range of consequences that you're likely to face. It was also intended to be very, very provocative. You pick somebody who is as prominent as Courtney is. You pick somebody who has been in the public's eye as long as he had been there, 100 days, standing up for a cause, and what you got was you were hoping to provoke a reaction which could lead to various decisions that might result in the postponement of the national elections in May. So there were several purposes that his assassination served, and I believe that maybe in one or two of them they might have succeeded. But in terms of his impact, it is absolutely devastating. But as I said before, we're deeply hurt, but we're not fatally wounded. And even though we are outraged, we will not be provoked.
I heard Kathy at the Linden rally, I presume it was, appealing to the citizens of Guyana to not let this incident drive them to violence, drive them in any way to pursue vengeance or revenge. And so I ask you, Nigel, I mean, you have an opportunity here to talk to the diaspora, to our listeners. How important is that, and what would you add to that?
Oh, absolutely. I am fully in support of that message that says, be calm. May the 11th is coming. Do not be provoked. This is intended to provoke you. This is intended to cause you to react in a manner which would perhaps be against your better judgment. So absolutely, do not be provoked. This is intended to provoke people. And my message to people both here and internationally is that we're going to find the guys that did this. We've got a pretty fair idea of where the persons who are involved in the actual execution. But what we really want to do is start finding the links to the authors of this activity. The police have picked up people who are totally unconnected in an attempt to pacify the public that they're doing work. I don't expect the police to actually do anything significant on this. Their track record in terms of events of this sort or murders of this type speaks for itself. I don't think they have solved one high-profile murder in the last 10, 15 years, from Monica Reese, whether it's Ronald Waddle, whether it's Minister Sash Saw, whether it's gentleman in Buxton that started that whole reaction. They have not solved any of these crimes. I don't expect them to do it because I don't believe, not that they don't have the capacity, I don't think they have or they are allowed the will to solve it.
Peter Ramstroop was on a few moments ago, just before you, and he was talking about how much growth there is in the economy, and how impressed or happy he is with that. But how would you make the case about growth on one end, financial growth, yet there are all these unsolved crimes and,
So when I had the privilege of going to university in the UK in the early to mid 80s, and the most successful economy in the African continent, in the 80s was the South African economy, and that's in the middle of apartheid. So arguing and saying that you've got fantastic growth figures when you had apartheid in the 80s doesn't mean anything if the majority of the people are not participating in the growth. And that's exactly what is happening in Guyana. If you look at the growth and the big houses and the big businesses that are being put up, I would only rely on the empirical evidence. That growth is limited to a very small band of people who happen to be connected to the government or benefit from the largesse of the government. Nobody else has seen that growth. And I think it's an insult to people in 2015 to tell them that they got a house lot, and they didn't get a house lot under the PNC, therefore they must be happy, and that is growth. That is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. In this day and age where the rest of the world is moving ahead technologically, you are selling a house lot and roads. It is the responsibility of every government, whoever's in office, they have to build roads. And in a country that is as underdeveloped as Guyana, you got to build roads. You can't open the wealth of this country in the interior unless you build roads. So it is horrendously patronizing to come and say, we have built roads and you've got a house lot and you've got running water and you've got electricity, as if we must be eternally grateful for what everybody else in the Caribbean takes as a given since 25, 30 years ago. The problem with the present, that argument is that you can't use benchmarks that are 30, 40 years ago and then say to the citizenry, you must stay with me because, hey, you could go back to 30 years ago. That to me is the most retrograde, patronizing argument that I've heard for a long, long time.
What do you say to the argument that weren't it for the persistent opposition of the parliament that, or interference of the parliament, that there'd be much more growth in the Guyana economy under this government?
Well, the argument, the response to that, that is, forgive me, I don't really wish to be particularly rude, but so what happened up to 2011? I mean, this government has been in there for 22 years. Exactly how many decades do they need for us to have growth? To argue that because in the last 3 years, several of their projects have been put up for scrutiny, not opposed necessarily, put up for scrutiny and have been found wanting. And because they've been found wanting, they begin to launch an argument that somehow or the other this is anti-developmental. All the awful scandals that have been revealed in the last 3 years indicate the extent to which this country was being plundered. So to say that development has been stymied in the last 3 years when they have had absolute majorities for the last 19 years, it really, could not be a serious argument.
I want to go to Amnesty International, Nigel. They've entered the picture and called for independent probe of Cromie Wing's murder. What can you tell us about that? About their involvement?
Okay, Amnesty International. Well, I don't need to tell you about Amnesty International. I, as a representative of the Cromie Wing family, actually made a complaint to Amnesty International and invited them to have a look at this assassination. They have their own independent means of conducting their investigation, and they have now issued a call for urgent action. The importance of an independent investigation of this matter is based on a couple of things. One of them is this: the postmortem, in effect, would reveal what caliber weapon was used. Mm-hmm. We send that information to our pathologists overseas. But more importantly, the shells that were recovered from the scene of the crime, because there were shells on the ground which were picked up, those shells have the potential to disclose the weapon that was used in the assassination of Mr. Cromie Wing. Now, the only agency that has a data bank of weapons that have been lawfully issued in Guyana is the Guyana Police Force. Therefore, if the Guyana Police Force were to conduct an examination of the shells that were recovered from the scene, and it were to match one of the weapons that have been lawfully issued to a citizen, then we don't know if they are likely to release that information or if they're likely to act on it. Because if the weapon that is used is tied to somebody who is politically connected, the citizenry don't have any way of verifying whether that is so. And given the low level of trust in the Guyana Police Force to act professionally, which is confirmed by a recent report that said that of all the police forces in this part of the world, Guyana enjoys the lowest level of confidence, then you know what will happen there. If the smoking gun leads to the smoke actually leads to the weapon that was used, and that weapon happens to be highly connected, then you're not going to get anything out of it. And that's why we have asked for an independent investigation. Now, this is a small caliber gun that was used. It was a 32, I suspect. Mm-hmm. Now, 32 weapons are weapons that the government gives licenses to private citizens. Now, it's very possible that a private citizen who is a licensed firearm holder could have fired, it could have been his weapon or her weapon, or he himself could have fired the weapon. But we will never know because we cannot rely on what the police have said. Now, there are eyewitnesses who have a description of the shooter that got out of the car, went up to Mr. Cromie Wing, spoke to him, walked past him, and then turned around and shot him in the back. Those eyewitnesses are petrified of speaking to the police because they fear that their life will become in danger because the police are likely to share that, or the information is likely to be shared with people who are in a position to do them harm. So you've got a population who may well have very useful information for the police, but who are not prepared to come forward. We are gathering this information independently, but I have to say to you, I cannot guarantee the protection of anybody who is in a position to assist the police, simply because in Guyana, as Courtney has demonstrated, you can be taken out. The people who take you out can never be identified. And so there's really no incentive to do that. We're at the moment raising funds to make sure that we've got a substantial reward for people who may be willing to consider that as a basis for wanting to share information with the police. But at the present moment, insofar as the police being able to solve this crime, and here's a concern I have. It's not going to be very difficult for the police if the pressure really gets to boiling point for them to find some young guy and say, look, hey, this is the murderer, and charge him. When there really is virtually no evidence, or they probably, coerce a confession statement out of him, only for him to be subsequently let go. So I don't put that past the machinations of the current law enforcement agency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I want to call three people: Prime Minister Samuel Hines, Police Commissioner Thilal Prasad, and Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Anil Nandilal. If there's a chance that they are listening, or you were able to speak directly to them, what would be your message to them, Nigel?
Fine.
I think we lost you there for real. Oh, Nigel.
Sorry, I lost you.
Yeah, okay, good.
My message, sorry about the internet. Unfortunately, recently we've been experiencing this here. Yeah, my message to them would be, look, we're in a bad state in Ghana. Citizens have virtually no confidence in the law enforcement agencies and the investigative agencies. You have lost a minister of your government, a sitting minister of your government, who was assassinated in the most brutal circumstances, Mr. Sathio Shaw. And up to today, 10 years later, we have not been able to identify the people who have been involved in that. It means, therefore, that as a country, we will never be able to guarantee our citizens any level of security. And that, therefore, means that people who really would like to invest in Ghana are going to be very wary about investing in Ghana. Let us all come together and make sure that we establish a law enforcement agency which is, first of all, independent of all political forces, government, opposition, parliamentary, non-parliamentary, independent completely of all political forces, that it does not report to a political boss, and that they are given the tools to be able to function as an effective law enforcement agency. The track record has not been good. Let us not spend time apportioning blame as to why we are where we are, but we historically need to look at how we got where we got to, only for the purposes of ensuring that we do not in the future repeat the errors that led us to where we are. And I would say let's make that a national effort.
That's a brilliant idea, Nigel. Is that something you're willing to propose to the new government, should the coalition win?
Oh yeah, I mean I've shared these views with the leadership of the AFC. I haven't spoken to the APNU, but I certainly shared these views with the leadership of the AFC.
Let's talk elections, Nigel. May 11th. I'm hearing different commentaries from people. Some people are saying it's about time, we need change, we need transformation. Then there are some people who are saying, man, I don't know, I'm not feeling it. I don't know if I'm going to go out and vote. You have an opportunity to speak to those people right now, Nigel, because I think voting is very important. It's a privilege that nobody should squander.
Well, it's more than a privilege, it's a right. And it's a right that, our ancestors have given their blood.
Yes.
Unpaid, brother, for the day when we can actually walk into the box to express our view without actually having to resort to anything else. I will say this. We as a country have only changed government once in 50 years, in 1992. It is unacceptable in any functioning democracy, especially a modern functioning democracy, to have one change of government in 50 years. The fact that you may not be as inspired as we would like you to be is not an excuse for having to go out to express your view, even if it's to express your disappointment with what has happened. The present circumstances will not change if you do nothing. Understand that if you are dissatisfied, if you are unhappy, if you believe that there is no hope, redoing the same thing over and over again by not going to vote is not going to change.